Where do I even begin? What a weekend. Another great college football Saturday is in the books, and it's time to look forward to another one. Before we look forward to week 7, let's go over some of the crazy events that happened in week 6. Let's start off with the major upset of the week. Navy upsetting number 6 Houston, who Houston looked like they were on a roll into the college football playoff. Only having to beat Louisville and they were good. However, Houston's defense could not stop that triple option. Ended up winding up to lose 46-40. And Houston just needs some help, just major help to even get back into the playoff discussion. With Oklahoma now having 2 losses. Well, they already had 2 losses. And Houston losing to Navy. Can they get to the playoff? I personally don't think so. And plus, with Louisville already having a loss to Clemson, I just don't see how it's a possibility for Houston to make the playoff. Do they deserve a chance? Yes. But are they going to be able to do enough to earn it? I don't know. It's going to be really difficult. USC pulling off the upset against Colorado. Now this is only technically an upset because Colorado's ranked 21, but it looked like USC was a much better team. Colorado making the rankings for the first time since 1994. But they're only there for 1 week and then lost to USC. Alabama dominated Arkansas. I mean, many thought Arkansas had a chance in this game, whether they can run the football successfully. It looked successful for not even halfway through the first quarter. Alabama just dominated this entire game. And they ended up winning 49-30. I mean, Alabama's just in a league of their own. I mean, as long as Nick Saban's that head coach, they're just going to be rolling right on their own. Let's see, what else happened? We had a bunch of events. Florida State and Miami. Huge in-state rivalry. Florida State hangs on for a 20-19 victory, having to block an extra point, which cost Miami a chance to tie the ball game and ended up costing them the game. I called the upset about Florida State beating Miami, although I did think they were going to win by double digits because I thought they were going to come out angry after the heartbreaking loss against North Carolina, which we'll talk about them in just a second. However, I can't wait for the NFL draft debate to determine which quarterback's better, whether if it's Deshaun Kaiser, Deshaun Watson, or Brad Kaya. It's going to be a really interesting thing to evaluate come January. Right, Virginia Tech and North Carolina. Virginia Tech just dominated this game. The field kind of had some nasty conditions because of the Hurricane Matthew, as well did Notre Dame and North Carolina State. A 10-3 final. I mean, North Carolina was just humiliated by Virginia Tech. They just couldn't get anything going on offense. Mitch Trubisky threw 2 interceptions, which ended his streak of no interceptions. I mean, Notre Dame's now 2-4 on the season. Many thought they had potential to go to the playoffs. Because you thought Deshaun Kaiser was going to be the leader of this season. But he's not getting the help around him. I just think maybe the week 1 loss against Texas, that's basically what kind of just put the nail in the coffin for the season. It just broke their confidence because many thought that Notre Dame was going to dominate Texas because nobody thought Texas had any potential. And Texas has just been stinking it up lately. I mean, they were competing with Oklahoma really well, but all the yardage they gave up in that game. Is Brian Kelly's job and is Charlie Strong's job on the line? We have no idea because LSU fired Les Miles last Sunday in the middle of the season. I apologize, 2 weeks ago they fired Les Miles. So really, no coach is safe right now. I mean, there was talks earlier, like coaches that were on the hot seat. Dana Holdridge for West Virginia. Kevin Sumlin for Texas A&M. Charlie Strong was in the hot seat. Mike Riley was on the hot seat. Many coaches are on the hot seat right now. I know it may not happen, but is Dan Mullen for Mississippi State on the hot seat? I don't know. I honestly don't think so. I think he's going to get a pass this year because Mississippi State doesn't have Dak Prescott anymore. So I think Dan Mullen for Mississippi State, he's going to get a pass this year. But if we see a repeat performance like this, I think Dan Mullen's going to be fired at the end of next season if this is a repeat performance of this year. But this year he's going to get a pass. That's just my guess. Washington just smokes Oregon 70-21. Oregon just needs to find their identity. I mean, that's 4 losses in a row now for the Ducks. I mean, Oregon is really struggling. Stanford's struggling as well. Getting blown out 2 weeks in a row, allowing 40-plus points in each of the last 2 games. What's wrong with Stanford? What's wrong with Notre Dame? What's wrong with Mississippi State? What's wrong with Michigan State? Losing 2 games in a row to Indiana and now BYU. What is happening to some of these big conference caliber type of teams? Like, what is happening? It's basically just an anomaly. Now let's finally get to the game of the week. Tennessee versus Texas A&M. Now, truthfully, Texas A&M had about like 6 chances to win this game like in the fourth quarter, but they couldn't convert. They couldn't get the first downs the second half. It seemed like a tale of 2 hats for each team. Tennessee couldn't get first downs in the first half, and Texas A&M couldn't get first downs in the second half. Although, I got to give Tennessee credit. I mean, overcoming 6 turnovers to force overtime and a 21-point deficit, that's pretty impressive. Even though Texas A&M had the intangibles to end it in regulation and blow out Tennessee, it's still an impressive performance by Tennessee, and their players, they don't have anything. They shouldn't at least be ashamed of anything. And that was just a really hard-fought game, and I really hope we see those two play again in the SEC championship game. I mean, it's a strong possibility. I mean, Texas A&M could beat Alabama on the 22nd, and A&M's in the driver's seat for the SEC championship game. And it looks like Tennessee is probably in the driver's seat for the title game in the SEC East, because they've already beaten Georgia. Florida, they're in the driver's seat. So we could possibly see these 2 teams play again in Atlanta on December the 5th. But anyway, kind of just recap how the game went. Took double overtime, 45-38. Now, I said that A&M was going to win 38-35 on a Daniel Camera game-winning field goal with about 3 seconds left. It could have happened. I mean, I was sitting there like, okay, that's basically where we're at in the ballgame. But Butch Jones ices him twice. I'm starting to think, could this actually be like the truth coming out? But when he missed it wide left, I'm like, oh, crap. I knew that Tennessee had all the momentum in the world. And I honestly thought A&M had the game lost as soon as he missed that field goal. And then he has to kick another one to force double overtime. And then I thought, oh, crap, this is all over with. Like, there probably would have been a podcast if it would have ended like that. Well, there probably would have. I just wouldn't. I would just kind of be down about it. But he ends up making it. I mean, then Trevor Knight made a lucky pass to Christian Kirk. Sometimes better be lucky than good, but that was just a luck play. Then Trevor Knight just runs it in for a touchdown the same way that it made him beat UCLA in the opening week. And then, on the first play, a second overtime for Tennessee, Amani Watts comes up with a huge clutch interception. In the defense, they really shine in this game. Even though they gave up over 700 yards of total offense, they really played their hearts out. I mean, if it weren't for like Amani Watts and if it weren't for Myles Garrett, if it weren't for those, or Deshaun Hall, or Justin Evans, if it weren't for those four guys on defense, Tennessee probably wins this game by like 14. I mean, I'm being realistic about it. I'm not gonna brag and I'm not gonna taunt any Tennessee fans. That was a really hard fought game. I hope we see this matchup again in the SEC title game come December. That's something I would really want to see. Because Tennessee probably would have won this game by 14 points if it weren't for those big four on defense for Texas A&M. Anyway, on to the Week 7 predictions. Let's start off with one on Friday night, Mississippi State versus BYU. BYU is coming off a big victory against Michigan State, and I think Mississippi State's just depleted at this point. They're realizing they don't have Dak Prescott anymore. I really think it's just taken a toll on this team this year, so I like BYU to win this one. It may not be easy, but I think they will get it done in the end. I think Taysom Hill is going to be a huge difference in the game, and plus BYU's running game. I just think Mississippi State's going to have a hard time stopping the running game of BYU. Kansas State and Oklahoma. Now, I think Oklahoma is really catching their stride. However, Kansas State is number 11 in total defense in all of college football. I think Baker Mayfield's going to have his hands full with this defense. In fact, the entire Oklahoma offense will have their hands full. However, I think they're catching their stride at the right time. I just think D.D. Westbrook, he's coming off a huge game against Texas in the Red River rivalry game. So that's huge momentum. So I like Oklahoma to win this one. Western and Texas Tech, another intriguing matchup in the Big 12. I mean, two prolific quarterbacks in the Big 12, Skyler Howard on West Virginia, Patrick Mahomes on Texas Tech. I think this is going to be really offensively type of a game. However, I just think West Virginia looks like a much stronger team right now. Even though Patrick Mahomes I believe he's second in college football in passing yards. I just think West Virginia's defense is going to really rise to the occasion on him. I think it's going to be really back and forth all the way to about the fourth quarter. I just think West Virginia is going to turn on the Jets in the fourth quarter with the running game. All right, Nebraska versus Indiana. I mean, Indiana, they competed with Ohio State really well. Even though they lost by 21, they were in it most of the game throughout the first three quarters. Nebraska's looking really strong, but are they too highly ranked? I mean, their only ranked victory this year was against Oregon, but Oregon's now on a 4-game losing streak. So, Nebraska's coming off a bye week. There's just so many injuries in Nebraska right now. I mean, Tommy Armstrong's banged up, Westerkamp's banged up. However, I honestly do think this Nebraska team is going to have their hands full against Indiana. This is a huge road game. Indiana is not a team to mess around with. We saw what they did against Michigan State. We saw what they did against Ohio State last year and throughout the first two quarters. Against Ohio State last week. We saw Iowa last year and Michigan last year. Indiana is not a team to mess around with, especially when you're on the road against Indiana. They're not a team to mess with. I think Nebraska's going to have to come from behind in the second half, but I think they'll get it done. I think that running game with Terrell Newby, led by Terrell Newby, is going to be the huge difference in this game. I like Nebraska to win by 7. An intriguing matchup in the Pac-12, UCLA versus Washington State. UCLA has lost 3 close games this year. A heartbreaker against Texas A&M. However, it's not really a heartbreaker as they came back from being down by 15 to force overtime. Stanford was really close, and they lost a close one to Arizona State last week. Washington State's one of the upstart teams, bunch of talent. I think this is going to be a great matchup to watch. I mean, if you're going to stay up late to watch this one. I just got to pick UCLA in this one. I just think Josh Rowe is going to be the difference in this game. I mean, you got Luke Falk on the other side, who's really talented himself. I like this to be, I think it's going to be in the 40s. About 48 to 42. in favor of UCLA. I just think the UCLA defense is going to make a huge play in the fourth quarter to seal it up. All right, now many people thought in the preseason that this is going to be a huge matchup, and this could be one of the matchups that had major playoff implications. But now it's just to save their season. Stanford versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame is 2-4. They've been horrendous this year. They've losses to Texas, Michigan State, NC State, and Duke. It's just been horrendous for Notre Dame. I mean, Brian Kelly's job is probably on the line. They've already fired their defensive coordinator. And Stanford, they're just looking depleted right now. Christian McCaffrey just can't get going. Neither can the offense. The last 2 weeks, Stanford's just been humiliated. I think Notre Dame is going to win this one only because they're catching Stanford at the wrong time, at the right time. Just wrong time for Stanford to play Notre Dame right now. I think the Sean Carr is going to be the difference in this game. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win. I think it's going to be a really close one. I think it's going to be low scoring. I'm going to say 21-14. All right, North Carolina versus Miami, Florida. Now Miami, they're coming off a heartbreaking loss against Florida State. They could have forced overtime and possibly won the game because they had momentum going. And North Carolina, they were just depleted last week. They just couldn't get anything going whatsoever. And I think Miami's going to come out guns a-blazing in this one. I think Brad Guy is going to throw about 4 touchdowns this game. And I think Miami's going to lead early. Probably get a 7-0 lead right away and never look back. I like Miami to win this one by double digits. I'm going to say 38-24. All right, a big matchup in the SEC. Ole Miss versus Arkansas. A battle of 2 lost teams in the SEC. This is for decent, like a decent bowl game, to get into a decent one. Arkansas showing off an humiliating loss. Ole Miss is trying to kind of get back into the discussion of possibly a New Year's 6, depending on how the rest of the season turns out, especially in the SEC conference. But I just think Arkansas's running game, that is going to be a difference in this one. I also think Sprinkle and Drew Moore are going to be difference for the Arkansas offense. I mean, we saw what happened last year. I mean, if you remember that game last year, it was just extremely a crazy game. I mean, Alex Collins Hunter Henry just lateraled the football. To Alex Collins, and he ended up getting a first down. I mean, if you don't remember that, look up Ole Miss versus Arkansas 2015, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But I think Arkansas is going to win this one. It may not have as much of a crazy ending as last year, but it's going to be a good one. I like that Arkansas to really recover from the humiliating loss last year against Alabama. Now these last two, number 1 and number 2, both have huge road tests this week. Alabama on the road to Tennessee is looking a little banged up. Looks like they're short but Tennessee has the depth. And Ohio State versus Wisconsin. All right, Alabama versus Tennessee first. Tennessee, they're looking to recover from a heartbreaking loss against Texas A&M. They knew they were in the game. They knew they made the comeback. It won't surprise me if Tennessee wins this week. I mean, Josh Dobbs is really talented. But is Jalen Hurd going to be able to play this week? I think it's going to be a huge key for Tennessee if Jalen Hurd can play to get him going. However, Tennessee's running game was pretty successful against Texas A&M last week. However, Texas A&M is not Alabama. I want to pick Tennessee to win this one. In fact, it won't surprise you if Tennessee actually wins this game. In fact, I will root for Tennessee in this one. But I think Alabama is just going to win this game. I just think they're just too strong right now. I think they're just too strong. They're much bigger and faster than Tennessee is. But it won't surprise you if Tennessee wins one big, because Tennessee is a talented football team. Right, this is possibly the game of the week. A huge top 10 matchup, Ohio State versus Wisconsin. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game, probably down into the trenches. Kind of like Wisconsin and Michigan last 2 weeks ago. I think it's going to be kind of like that. Ohio State's 3rd in the country in total defense, and Wisconsin's 8th in total defense. So this is going to be highly defensive contested. It's going to come down to which offense can step it up in the fourth quarter. And I got to pick the leadership of JT Barrett in Ohio State over Wisconsin. Low scoring game. Maybe not necessarily low, but kind of average. 24-20 Ohio State. I think JT Barrett's going to run it in for a touchdown with about 2.5 minutes left. Wisconsin will be able to respond. So I'm going to pick Ohio State to win this one. Well, that is going to do it for your Week 7 cultural predictions. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends, your family, your significant others, loved ones, co-workers, just anybody. Just share it to random strangers. Anyway, follow my sports account at JV Talk Sports. That is all I have for you today. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you next time.